I see is the battle, you see my victory. When all I see is a mountain, you see a mountain move. And as I walk through the shadow, your love surrounds me. There's nothing to fear now, for I am safe with you. So when I fight, I'll fight on my knees with my hands lifted high. Oh God, the battle belongs to you. Every fear I lay at your feet. I'll sing through the night. Oh God, the battle belongs to you. And if you are for me, who can be against me? Yeah. For Jesus, there's nothing impossible for you. When all I see are the ashes, you see the beauty. Thank you, God. When all I see is a cross, God, you see the empty tomb. Oh. So when I fight, I'll fight on my knees with my hands lifted high. Oh God, battle belongs to you. Every fear I lay at your feet. I'll sing through the night. Oh God, battle belongs to you. An almighty fortress, you go before us. Nothing can stand against the power of our God. You shine in the shadows, you win every battle. Nothing can stand against the power of our God. An almighty fortress, you go before us. Nothing can stand against the power of our God. You shine in the shadows, you win every battle. Nothing can stand against the power of our God. An almighty fortress, you go before us. Nothing can stand against the power of our God. You shine in the shadows, you win every battle. Nothing can stand against the power of our God. So when I fight, I'll fight on my knees with my hands lifted high. Oh God, the battle belongs to you. Every fear I lay at your feet. I'll sing through the night. Oh God, the battle belongs to you. Oh, oh God, the battle belongs to you.
Hey, welcome to Prairie Lakes Church. I'm Pastor Cody. I'm the digital pastor here at PLC, and I'm just so glad that you're here. And before anything else, we need you to hear that we're a no-matter church. What that means is no matter who you are, where you've been, what you've done, or even what's been done to you, we need you to know God loves you, and you can go on the journey here with us. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to clean yourself up to be here. We're really glad that you're here. And if you're new or newer, or you haven't taken the step to become known, you've just been attending anonymously for a while, I'd love for you to take that step here today, because what we know is connected people are growing people. When you take that step to become known, when you engage in our next steps, when you get connected here at Prairie Lakes Church, God uses that in significant ways to change your life. So if you want to take that step here today, I'll send you an Amazon gift card just as a thank you. And you can do that right now by taking out your phone and texting PLC to 99581. And the next step that we take here is connecting relationally. And that is a step that we primarily do through small groups. And we have a great way to test out a small group. Here in 2 weeks, we're doing a church-wide study along our Stories Jesus Told series. We're gonna be diving into the parables. So if you've been on the fence and you just haven't tested out a group, or maybe you just have been on a break from a group, now's your time to kind of test the waters again, to jump back in, to come alongside other people here at Prairie Lakes Church, to grow alongside them. So I encourage you right now to learn more, or to even sign up. And you can do that by texting connect to 99581. And the next step that we talk about every single week is giving generously. So I just want to thank you all who have given so faithfully and generously to Prairie Lakes Church. It has just made a tremendous difference, and it really practically allows us to even have an online campus. So I just want to say thank you to all who have given so generously. And if you want to take that step here today, you can even do that right now by going to prairielakes.org/give, and you can even select the online campus from the drop-down. We're going to continue in today's service, so let's kick to today's message.
Well, everybody, welcome to Prairie Lakes Church this weekend. And no matter where you're joining us from, if you're one of our physical locations all across Iowa, or online campus all across Iowa and beyond, welcome. We're glad you're here, and we are one church on many corners getting to do this thing together at Prairie Lakes Church. And hey, your weekend host already said this, but I want to repeat it because I think it's important today. We're a no matter church, okay? We all need a no matter church. We are messy people in need of God's grace. And at Prairie Lakes Church, we don't hide that or run from that. In fact, we kind of wear that like a badge because it's who we are. We're no matter people. And we need to keep that in mind this weekend, every weekend, but especially this weekend as we continue to talk about this message series called Mindset. So if you missed last week's message, this is week 2 of a 3-week series called Mindset. And here's what we mean when we say mindset. You say, what is mindset? Here's what it is. It's how we weave our thoughts into attitudes, beliefs, and stories in order to make sense of ourselves and the world around us. That's what a mindset is. We all have them. In fact, we all have them very strongly, that when someone else's mindset or perspective seems to clash with ours, we feel a little bit threatened or a little bit challenged because they challenge our narratives or our own mindset and stories. And last week, Pastor Jesse kicked off this series by talking about soundtracks. And the soundtracks are the tapes or the narratives that play in our minds about ourselves, our world, and others around us. One of the things he talked about was having a growth mindset. And here's one of the big ideas from the message. You can change your mindset when you shift your focus. You can change your mindset when you shift your focus. And I'm going to demonstrate that this weekend as we talk about a significant topic that impacts a lot of us and that I'm very familiar with. It is anxiety. And some of you just got anxious because you heard that we were talking about anxiety. And hey, listen, I have personally wrestled with anxiety most of my life. And as a pastor, I've walked a lot of people through their seasons of anxiety. And I'm well acquainted with this topic. But before I talk about my story and before we talk about how to manage anxiety and navigate it well, I want to level set and just talk about what anxiety is so we can start in the same place. But before I do that, I want to give a quick encouragement to you. You may have just heard me say we're going to talk about anxiety, and you may not wrestle with anxiety, and so you go, hey, this message isn't primarily about me. And even if you're in that spot, this message is for you. Even if it's not about you, it's for you. So please don't tune out. There are many people in your life and many people in your little Iowa that wrestle with anxiety, and this message may be the very thing God needs you to hear right now so that you can learn how to love and encourage the people God's put around you. Maybe this message is for you to gain some empathy and understanding for the people in your little Iowa that God's placed around you who do wrestle with anxiety. This message is for all of us, okay? So here's where I want to begin with this question. What is anxiety? We're going to talk about two types. And here's the first type of anxiety. Anxiety is temporary or chronic feelings of fear, restlessness, or unease. Now, we all experience this. All of us feel this at times in our lives. We feel anxiety. It's a normal part of our humanity and the human process, the human emotional range. Anxiety is a part of it, okay? Now, we all experience this, but sometimes it becomes more serious, and it's what we call clinical anxiety. And here's what clinical anxiety is. It's lasting or chronic feelings of fear, restlessness, or unease, which disrupt a person's daily activities for an extended period of time. It's more intense than regular anxiety, and it lasts longer than typical anxiety. That is clinical anxiety. Because listen, we all have bad days. We all have anxious thoughts. And at times it's disruptive, but clinical anxiety is when anxiety happens enough and deep enough that it becomes disruptive to our lives. And clinical anxiety is diagnosable. In fact, there's 5 different anxiety disorders that we can have based on symptoms, and it often requires medication, counseling, or therapy and intervention. It's often unmanageable without help. That's what clinical anxiety is. Now, when we feel anxiety, often we have physical symptoms. So some of you may be thinking like, well, I don't struggle with anxiety. I don't feel that. Well, here's some things physically that happen in our body that may be clues that you are experiencing anxiety. Here's the list, right? It's a really fun list of things to experience. Muscle tension, physical weakness, poor memory, sweaty hands, fear or confusion, inability to relax, constant worry, shortness of breath, heart palpitations, upset stomach, and panic attacks. Isn't that a fun list? It sounds like a Pepto-Bismol commercial, or it sounds like the end of a prescription drug commercial where they list all the side effects and they're like, and death, right? Like it just feels like, oh my goodness, so many things. And here's the problem with all of those. We do not like to feel any of those. And often anxiety produces physical symptoms like that in our lives. So we learn to fear anxiety. We want to run from it. And especially if we're in public, we're like, I don't want to feel any of those things. So the question is this, where does anxiety come from? Like, why do we experience anxiety? And I'm just going to give you quickly the 4 top reasons why we experience anxiety in our lives today. And here's the first one. It's biological factors. You may have a hormonal imbalance, a vitamin deficiency. You may have poor diet and exercise. There may be chemical imbalances in your body, things that are contributing to you experiencing anxiety that have nothing to do with the world around you, but it's about what's going on inside of you. For some of us, we experience some anxiety because of life stressors, school, work, kids, finances, your spouse, social media, like all different kinds of things that press in on us that cause us to feel anxiety. And for some of us, it's not those two, it's unresolved trauma. For some of us, our past and the past things that we've walked through that have been difficult inform our present in ways that we're not necessarily aware of, and it's coming out in our lives as anxiety. And then lastly, some of us experience anxiety because of our personality type, and I'm in this camp. I'm type A. If you're more type A than type B, you're kind of hardwired to have anxiety. And if you're an Enneagram follower, if you are an Enneagram 1, 3, or 6, congratulations, you won the anxiety lottery. Now, I'm a 1, okay? So I'm saying that as a 1 who knows. But those are some of the sources of our anxiety and where they come from. There's a lot of different ways we can experience anxiety. Now, here's what I want to give you. I'm going to give you a few statistics on anxiety, and I think this is really, really important to look at. These come from the National Institute of Mental Health, which is a part of the National Institute of Health, and this is from last year. So here's the stats. You ready? Here they are. 19.1% of U.S. adults, this is last year, had an anxiety disorder. That's almost 1 in 5 adults had a diagnosable anxiety disorder. Not somebody that said, I feel anxious, but they actually got it checked out and were diagnosed with an anxiety disorder. And here's the backside of that statistic. It's this. Prevalence was higher for females, 23.4%, than for males, 14.3%. Now, listen, I don't think the gap is that wide, and here's why. I'm a guy, and here's what I know about guys. Guys don't like to go to the doctor. So I guarantee you that this is actually closer than it looks, okay? But that's just adults. Now let's look at adolescents real quick. This is crazy. 31.9% of adolescents had an anxiety disorder in the last year. The prevalence was higher for females, 38%, than for males, 26.1%. Here's what that means. Almost 4 in 10 adolescent girls, 12 to 18, have a diagnosed anxiety disorder. And here's what you'll find when you dig into these statistics. The younger you go throughout generations, the more the prevalence of anxiety rises. There's a direct correlation between age and anxiety level amongst people. And it's crazy how prevalent that is right now. And I give you those statistics because I want you to see and know, if you struggle with anxiety, my friend, you're not alone. There's a lot of co-sufferers. And if you don't, you just need to know that a lot of people around you wrestle with this personally, which I'm going to share with you right now a little bit of my story, okay? So here's my disclaimer. I've been a Christ follower for 25 years. I've been in vocational ministry my entire adult life. I've got a master's degree in counseling. So if anybody should be able to manage their anxiety, it should be me. If anybody is not anxious or stressed, it should be me. But here's what you need to know. I've always been a pretty nervous, high-strung, high-achieving person. I work hard. I like to perform well. I put a ton of pressure on myself. And some of you are nodding because you're like, that sounds just like me. So I started having physical symptoms of anxiety when I was a senior in college. And at the time, it wasn't a big deal. It was pretty manageable, and it kind of went away. But anxiety really revealed itself in my life in 2006. I had my first full-blown panic attack, and I thought I was dying, literally. I was about to go to the ER. And it was so weird and foreign to me, and at the time, I had no idea what was going on physically with me or emotionally with me. But as I look back, here's what I realized. I had all kinds of reasons to feel anxious. I was a new youth pastor at a church starting a new youth program. My wife and I had recently moved from Colorado to Nebraska. Our son Xavier was 1 year old. We were brand new parents trying to figure out what that meant. And my wife Amy was struggling with postpartum. I had all these different things, and I didn't have good outlets for the stress and anxiety in my life. And the check engine light on my body started going off, and I didn't know what was going on. And so I did what most 26-year-old men would do. I ignored it, and I swept it under the rug until I started getting panic attacks almost daily. Sometimes multiple times in a day. So on the advice of my wife, I sucked it up and I went to the doctor. My general doc said, hey, everything looks good. Your labs look good. I'm going to send you to a cardiologist just in case. So I went to a cardiologist. I had to wear a heart monitor for a month. They gave me every test under the sun except for like a mammogram. It was crazy, right? I had all these tests done. And at the end, he looked at me and he said, hey, blood work's good. Your heart's structurally good. Electrically, it's good. I don't think anything's wrong with your heart. And he didn't say what he needed to say or could say because he couldn't diagnose me with an anxiety disorder. But here's what he did. He gave me some medication and he said, hey, if you ever feel this way again, take one of these. So I put him on the shelf, and then about a week later, I pulled him down. I was curious. So I did a quick little Google search and found out he gave me anti-anxiety medication because he couldn't diagnose me with it, but he knew what was going on. And for the last 17 years of my life, I have struggled with an anxiety disorder. Some days it's not very present. Some days it's like that annoying little thing running in the background of my life, and some days it feels all-consuming and overwhelming. And here's the most important thing in the last 17 years that I've learned about anxiety that I want to share with you today that I think might help many of you. And here's what it is. It's a mindset shift. And here it is. Here's the shift. Anxiety is neutral as an emotion. Anxiety is not bad. How we respond to anxiety can either be helpful or unhelpful. And I'm going to say that again. This is really important. The mindset shift is this, that anxiety is neutral. Anxiety is not bad. How we respond to anxiety can either be helpful or unhelpful. Now, here's the thing. Anxiety is like a tool. So I've got this pipe wrench here with me. It's used. It's been beat up because I've used this at about 4 houses that I've owned throughout my life. It's been very, very helpful. Now, this pipe wrench is a tool. It's not good or bad. It's neutral, right? Like I can use this to fix the pipes in my basement, or I could use this to assault somebody, which would be an awesome headline, right? Like pastor assaults church member with wrench. But this is a tool. It's not good or bad. It's a matter of what I do with this makes this good or bad. And anxiety functions a lot in the same ways in our lives, where it is a neutral tool. And let me explain how I got to this spot. Understanding this, honestly, has completely transformed the way I view anxiety and the way I manage it. Here's what I used to believe about anxiety. Ready? It was a bad emotion caused by bad things in my life. So when I felt anxious, what did I do? Well, I felt ashamed. So I hid. And I said, hey, I'm a bad Christian, and I'm a bad pastor, and I'm a bad person. And why can't I just feel good and feel normal? And something is deficient about me. I'm less than. But then I remembered Jesus. And I remembered the story about Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane right before he was crucified. And it changed the way I view anxiety because I remembered that Jesus was anxious. He was stirred up. He was stressed. In fact, here's what it says in Luke chapter 22. It says, Jesus went out as usual, meaning he went a lot, to the Mount of Olives, and his disciples followed him. On reaching the place, he said to them, "Pray that you will not fall into temptation." And he withdrew about a stone's throw beyond them, and he knelt down and he prayed. Now look what happens. He says, "Father, if you're willing, take this cup from me. Yet not my will, but yours be done." And the cup means the suffering, the wrath of God that was going to be poured out on Jesus on the cross. An angel from heaven appeared to him and strengthened him. And being in anguish, he prayed more earnestly, and his sweat was like drops of blood falling to the ground. Jesus was praying in such anguish that he sweat drops of blood. Now that's anxious and that's stressed. And remember, my friends, Jesus is fully God and he's fully human, and his humanity was anxious and stressed. And even in anxiety, Jesus allowed that to drive him to prayer, to his Father, to his knees in dependence upon the Father's strength and the Father's comfort. And here's what you need to know. What Jesus felt, that anxiety, what Jesus experienced in the garden was not sinful. How he felt and then responded to stress and anxiety was not sinful. And here's how I know that to be true. Here's what Hebrews 4:15 says about Jesus. It says, "For we do not have a high priest," meaning Jesus, "who is unable to empathize with our weaknesses, but we have one who has been tempted in every way, just as we are, yet he did not sin." He did not sin. Jesus never sinned. Not one thought, not one desire, not one action, not one emotion that Jesus felt was ever sinful. Even in his anxiety and his turmoil in the garden in Luke 22, he allowed his anxiety to help him in that it drove him to dependence, to prayer, to ask others to pray for him, to model for the disciples what to do in situations where we feel like anxiety is overwhelming. When anxiety comes, his anxiety wasn't sinful, and neither is your feeling of anxiety. And here's what this means. Feeling anxiety is neutral. It's a tool that presents us with an opportunity to examine our lives. And here's what else this means. Don't miss this. God understands how you feel. God understands your anxiety, and he knows it because he's felt it. And because Jesus has felt it, he can empathize with us when we do. He knows what it's like to be in the spot that we're in when we feel anxious. And that is so important, my friends, and that changes everything. Now, to be sure, anxiety feels awful. But let's be honest, so do a lot of things that are very, very helpful and good for us. Exercise, getting in shape, doesn't feel good in the moment, but it's very, very helpful. Surgery definitely does not feel good before, during, or after, but it's helpful. Dealing with conflict in our relationships doesn't always feel good, but it's very, very helpful and necessary. A lot of things that feel uncomfortable, that feel bad, are actually very helpful to us. And so let's go back to this main point again to reiterate this. The mindset shift is this: anxiety is neutral. Anxiety is not bad, but how we respond to anxiety can either be helpful or unhelpful. Some of you are going like, yeah, but I'm not buying it yet. Okay, I'm going to give you two scriptures that I draw from a lot when I'm talking to people about anxiety. Two helpful passages. And I know that some of you may be here this weekend because you heard that a church was going to talk about anxiety, and you're like, I don't know about Jesus, and I don't know about the Bible. Okay, if you're in that spot, just hang with me, okay? Because I think these two verses give us a lot of help. And here's the first one. It's Philippians chapter 4, verses 6 through 7. And Paul wrote these words about 2,000 years ago to the churches around Philippi. And here's what he says. He says, "Do not be anxious about anything." Now, I'm just going to stop there. Because when I first started being anxious and feeling anxiety and I read these words, I felt condemned. So I was like, great, right? I feel anxious. The Bible says don't be anxious, but I feel anxious, so something's wrong with me. I got to figure out how to get rid of this. But that's not what Paul's saying. He's not saying don't feel anxiety. That's impossible. He's saying don't sit in it. Don't stay in anxiety. Don't just sit in anxiety. And the reason why he says that is there's a better option, and it's the way of Jesus in the garden. He says, don't be anxious about anything, but in every situation, do what? Well, by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And when you do, the peace of God, which transcends or passes all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Paul doesn't say that anxiety is bad. He doesn't say that it's sinful. He doesn't say that you can purposefully always avoid feeling anxiety. He doesn't say that, but what he says is this: don't sit in it, because there's a better option. And that better option is prayer. Going to God with your anxiety, like Jesus did in the garden. And he says also with thanksgiving, like even when you're anxious, even when you're in the midst of a panic attack, to say, God, I trust you. God, I know you're good. Even when. Now, you need to know this. I've done this many, many times where I feel anxious. I say, okay, here's what Philippians 4 says. I need to give this to God. And sometimes, by the grace of God, a miracle happens and my anxiety is pretty gone right away. Like, it helps. And there's other times when I feel anxious or I'm having a panic attack and I'm praying to God with thanksgiving and I still feel anxious. So then I pray to God again and I still feel anxious. I pray to God again and I still feel anxious. And in those moments, here's the beauty of what's happening. I'm going to God even when I don't feel good. I'm going to God even when I'm anxious. I'm going to God even when I'm panicking, just like Jesus did. And I'm training myself to trust God with whatever's going on inside over and over again. Even when I don't feel better, I'm doing the right thing. And that's what Paul is saying. When you feel anxious, there's a better option. Don't just sit in it. Go to God, go to God, go to God, go to God. That is a helpful way to manage anxiety. And then here's another verse. It's Romans 8:28. A lot of us know this verse. Paul says, and we know that in all things, even anxiety, God works for the good of those who love him, who've been called according to his purpose. And some of you right now are like, wait a minute. You mean God can use my clinical anxiety for good in my life? And I would say, yes. Wait, for those around me. Like, God can use my anxiety to benefit people around me? Yes. You mean to tell me the very thing that I prayed for God to take away from my life, my anxiety, the thing I want to be free from, is actually the thing that God wants to use for my good? Yes. You mean when I feel like I'm dying in the middle of a panic attack and the world is closing in around me, that God can use that for my good? And the answer is yes. And I say that as somebody who's experienced that personally. And I've witnessed that in the lives of people around me as well. God can even use your anxious heart, your anxious thoughts for good. So the question is, how, right? And some of you have been in a spot where anxiety has been a part of your story and a part of your life for a really long time. And you're like, I've tried a lot of different things, okay? So I need you to hear me on this. There are ways that you can manage anxiety in a helpful way with God's help. And listen, if you're a follower of Jesus, awesome, these work. If you're not a follower of Jesus yet, these 3 steps work. And I'm going to give you 3 steps to manage your anxiety in a helpful way. So here they are. Say, hey, how do we manage anxiety in a helpful way? Number 1, reframe your anxiety. Step 1 in managing anxiety in helpful ways to reframe your anxiety. So here's how anxiety typically goes for us. We start to feel anxious. Kind of feel it welling up in our body. We go, oh, here we go again, right? I feel awful. I don't like it. So we try to sweep it under the rug or bury it. And when we do, our anxiety often turns into more severe things like depression, addiction, or clinical anxiety. So we begin to see anxiety as the enemy. I don't like it. I don't want to feel it. I can't sweep it under the rug. So it is bad. I need to avoid it. I need to get rid of it as fast as I can and run away from it. But that only works for so long, if it even works at all. But remember, anxiety is not good or bad. It's neutral. How we respond to anxiety can either be helpful or unhelpful. So the question we ask when we reframe anxiety is this: how is anxiety informing you? How's it informing you? Because it's neutral. Feeling anxiety is like the check engine light of your car and the dash starting to go off. It's saying, hey, you need to pay attention to something under the hood. Something isn't right. You need to look at that thing, because if you don't, there's going to be a bigger problem. And I've literally known people in my life that put tape over the check engine light on their car because they don't want to fix it and they don't want to deal with it. And a lot of us do that with anxiety. But when we reframe anxiety, here's what we believe. Anxiety is an invitation to live differently, and it's an opportunity for growth. It's an invitation to live differently and an opportunity for growth. And when our mindset shifts about anxiety and we believe this, we start to navigate through seasons and days of anxiety differently. Sometimes when I experience anxiety, I call this shaking hands with anxiety. But I don't run from it because it's not the enemy, it's neutral. So I shake hands with it and just kind of go, hey, why are you there? What's going on? In fact, sometimes I'll even say out loud when I'm anxious, hello, old friend, right? Because it's not the enemy. Feeling anxious is not the enemy, even when it feels like it is. And reframing anxiety means I'm going to listen to my anxiety. I'm going to start asking questions like this. How is anxiety speaking to me? How can I grow from this? How is God speaking to me through my anxiety? And how is God inviting me to live differently? Step one is mindset shift by reframing anxiety. It's not bad, it's neutral. I don't need to run from it, I can grow through it. It's not bad and somehow I'm not deficient or defective when I feel it. It's a normal part of life. But the first part is reframing anxiety. The second step is this. Second step is assess and identify the roots of your anxiety. Identifying the roots of our anxiety, figuring out where it's coming from. I call this being curious about your anxiety. When did anxiety start for you? Trace it back. What situations or experiences cause anxiety or panic attacks in your life? And this is where keeping a journal and writing things down is really, really helpful. And here's why. When you start to journal about your anxiety and write down things like when did it start, what happened, what was the intensity of my feelings, here's what you're going to find. You're going to find patterns. And pretty soon you're going to be able to identify, here's situations that cause me to feel anxious. Here's a person that I feel anxious around. Here's what triggers my anxiety in ways that I wasn't aware of before. When you start to explore them, you begin to identify those types of things. And one of the things I want you to identify is this. What self-talk do you attach to your anxiety? Because here's what I used to do with my anxiety. I would attach guilt and shame, and that somehow I was defective or a bad person, and I would attach those things to my anxiety. So when I felt my anxiety, I could not see it as neutral. I could not see it as something to grow through or that could be helpful in my life. All I saw was it is bad. But remember, anxiety is like the check engine light of your car. It's letting you know that you need to pay attention to something. And finding what that something is incredibly important. And one of the things you'll discover are those anxiety triggers, those things that cause you to feel anxious. And here's mine. I've got performance anxiety. When I feel out of control in situations, I get anxious. When I don't have enough alone time, because I'm an introvert, I get anxious. Failure, even talking about money sometimes, those things trigger me. And I know that because I've been able to discover what's underneath my anxiety and what's causing it. And here's a powerful phrase that I want you to grab a hold of about this. When you discover the why behind anxiety, you gain freedom and more control over it. When you discover the why, you gain more freedom and control over anxiety. You get a sense of control knowing here are the situations and here are the ways that I often feel anxious. And here's why this is important. A lot of times anxiety feels nebulous. It just feels like it comes on out of nowhere and it attacks us. But when we start to figure out the whys, we gain freedom and we gain control. And here's my last encouragement with step number 2, with this assessment step. Go to a counselor. If you're wrestling through clinical anxiety or some lingering anxiety that you just don't know what to do with, go see a counselor. I've seen the same counselor almost every month for 13 years, and she is phenomenal. She has helped me identify a lot of the roots of my anxiety. It's been incredibly beneficial. I would not be the person or the pastor or the man I am today without her guidance and her wisdom and her clarity, because counselors see things in us that we don't see. And my friends, you need to know this. It's okay to not be okay. It's okay to not be okay. Just don't stay there. Just don't stay there. Take a step. Seeing a counselor is a great way to assess where anxiety is coming from. That's step number 2. Here's the last step. Step number 3 is this: practice self-care. Say, how can I allow anxiety in my life to inform my life in helpful, good ways by practicing self-care? Listen to me, friends. Ready? Self-care is not selfish. I'm going to say that again. Self-care is not selfish. Somewhere in the church, we got this idea that taking care of ourselves is somehow wrong or bad or selfish. But listen, Jesus took care of himself. Jesus rested. He said no. He took naps. He spent time alone. He asked for help. He asked for prayer. He took a weekly Sabbath. So my friends, how well are you taking care of your body? With exercise and diet, sleep, rest, vacations. What about your caffeine or alcohol intake? Do you have trusted friends that you can talk to, that you share your heart with? Are you growing spiritually? Are you talking to other people about your emotions, your inner life, what's going on inside of you? Here's why that's important. One of the least helpful ways to manage anxiety is what I call the anxiety box. And here's what it looks like. It's a box that closes in. Because all of a sudden, we do life, but we get triggered and we feel anxious by something, so we stop doing that thing. For instance, we feel triggered by physical exercise, so we stop exercising. The anxiety box gets smaller. So we feel ashamed about that, and so we don't go out as much with friends, and the box gets smaller. So then we isolate, and we don't like to go out at all, and the box gets smaller. And pretty soon, our life looks like a tiny little box of anxiety. And why self-care is so important is self-care says, I'm going to push the walls of that anxiety box out. I'm going to exercise. I'm going to see a counselor. I'm going to talk about what's going on. I'm going to keep pushing the walls of my anxiety out, because when you do, here's what's going to happen. You're going to find victory and confidence, because you're going to realize that anxiety doesn't win. It doesn't have to have the last say, and that you have a measure of control and freedom when it comes to feeling anxious, that you can actually do practical things to make it better. Now, here's what I want to encourage you to do this week. I want you to grab a piece of paper, do a quick assessment, and here's what I want you to do on the top of the paper. Write these 4 things: physical, emotional, relational, spiritual. 4 areas of your life in terms of how well you're practicing self-care. Then I want you to rate each one of these 4, 1 to 10, 1 being you're horrible at it, 10 being Jesus level, okay? And then list some of the reasons why. Why did you rate yourself that way? And if there's any ratings below a 7, if you get 6 or below, you need to look at that area of your life and go, hey, God's probably trying to get your attention somewhere in there. And there's some ways you need to be caring for yourself, for your soul, for your emotional life, more than you currently are, in a way that will help you. Here's my last encouragement with self-care. Taking medication for anxiety, especially clinical anxiety, is often a necessary part of self-care. Medication can be very helpful, and it doesn't mean that you're less than or deficient or helpless. Medication is often necessary, short or long term. So make sure you don't believe the lie that somehow you're sinning if you take medication. Don't try to tough it out on your own. Take care of yourself. Sometimes medication is a part of self-care. So those are the 3 steps. Now I want to go back to the main idea one more time and just see this again. The mindset shift that can change everything in terms of how you experience anxiety is that anxiety is neutral. Anxiety is not bad. How we respond to anxiety can either be helpful or unhelpful. Now here's how I want to close, friends. God can redeem your anxious heart, and God can bring good through your anxiety. If your relationship with anxiety right now feels hopeless, my friends, I want you to borrow my hope. I want you to lean into the truth of my story and the countless other stories of people's lives that I've been able to minister to and see them grow and gain victory over anxiety, because change is possible. Freedom is possible, and growth is possible. Now, you can't completely rid your life of anxiety. That is an impossible journey. And you may battle with clinical anxiety for part or all of your life, but anxiety does not need to define you. It does not need to control you. It does not need to be harmful. It can actually be helpful. And I want you to always remember this, no matter how bad your wrestle with anxiety is. Because Jesus experienced anxiety. He knows how it feels. You are safe with Him. You can go to Him with your anxiety and know that you have a God who loves you and perfectly understands you and how you feel. Let your anxiety drive you to Him, just like it did for Jesus.
Dear anxiety, you and I are complicated. You are my worry. You are my fear. You are my racing thoughts and my sleepless nights. You keep me on edge. You are my hyperactivity. You're the reason I hide. Yet, you and I are complicated. You keep me safe. You keep my feet moving forward. You alert me when no one else will. You're a friend who shows up like an enemy. Dear anxiety, you make me need grace, and at times, maybe you are that grace.
Take this fainted heart, take these tainted hands, my strength is lost, I'll praise you. Even when I have no song, I'll praise you. Even when it makes no sense to sing, louder than I'll sing your praise. I will only sing your praise.
Dear anxiety, you are my fight. You are the pits in my stomach. You're the race in my heart. You're the name of my sleepless nights. You're the face of my relationship problems. You keep me from making friends. You permeate my loneliness. Dear anxiety, you keep me home when I'd rather go. You hold me back when I'd rather speak. You keep me stuck when I want to move. Dear anxiety, you feel like my battle, my ocean, my trial, my fight, my pain. Yet, you and I are complicated. Dear anxiety, once in a while, you get it right. You hold me back when true danger lurks. You keep me awake until that problem is solved. You fester in my soul until I turn back to God.
Take this mountain weight. Take these ocean tears. Hold me through the trial. Come like grace again. Even when the fight seems lost, I'll praise you. Even when it hurts the worst, I'll praise you. Even when it makes no sense to sing, louder than I'll sing you praise. Oh, I will only sing you praise. Oh, I will only sing your praise.
Dear God, I love how familiar you are with my humanity, how you remain no matter my intention or direction. Being human is hard, God, and you know it.
And my heart burns only for you. You are all I want.
Dear God, being anxious is hard, and you know it. You don't see me as weak. You want me, all of me, even if I don't want you, but I do, God. I do want you. I need you.
And my soul waits only for you, and I will sing till the morning has come.
Dear God, I don't expect you to take away my anxiety. I need something else from you. I need your love. I need you near. I need to know you will never go.
And my heart burns only for you. And you are all I want.
Dear God, being human is hard, and you are the answer. God, you help me to want you. You help me to run towards you instead of away from you. You are with me. I am not alone. You are for me. I am here for you. I will sing to you.
and my soul waits only for you, and I will sing till the miracle comes. Yeah, I will only sing your praise. Oh, I will only sing your praise. I will only sing your praise.
Isn't it great that we serve a God who knows what we go through? Jesus experienced anxiety that we experienced. He's experienced all the trials and the temptations, the hardships of life that you and I go through every single day. He's a God that loves us. He's a God that we can turn to for help. And today we get to celebrate just a picture of that love. We get to remember the greatest act of love that there's ever been. So if you are a believer, if you've made that decision to step across the faith line, I encourage you to partake in communion with us today. And if you're not, that's okay. I just encourage you to be in this moment with us, to reflect on these truths here in this moment. So in Jesus' Last Supper with his disciples, he took the bread. He said, "This bread represents my body, which will be broken for you." And it was. His body was broken, he was beaten, it was put on the cross to die for you. So let's eat in remembrance. In the same way, he took the cup. He said, "This is the new covenant in my blood, which will be shed for you." And it was. So let's drink in remembrance. Let's pray. God, we just come before you today thankful, grateful for this ultimate act of love and pursuit of us. We thank you that because of the cross, because of what you've done, we can be forgiven, seen as righteous because of that. So God, we just pray today that we would leave strengthened, that you would encourage us even here today. And we pray this all in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. We talked about some hard stuff today. And often when we talk about hard stuff, it brings up hard stuff. Maybe you have something stirring, something you need to process or talk through with someone. We would love to be there for you. So we want to connect you with someone at Prairie Lakes Church, a staff member here, to talk with you through what you're going through. Maybe you're already processing it with someone, but you just want someone else to know so that they can be praying for you. That's great too. So this life can be hard. Anxiety can be hard. So we've put together just a robust intake form just to get you connected to a staff member here at Prairie Lakes Church to talk through what you're going through with them. So all you need to do to start that process, to get connected with someone here this week, is to text anxiety to 99581, and that's anxiety to 99581, and we'd love to be there for you. And kids, you are up next. Children's ministry is about ready to begin, and everyone else will see you back next week.
answers. God, I turn to you. You are my help when I need wisdom. You always see me through. To know that you're chasing after me, it makes me wanna run to where you are. God, you make this journey worth it. I give you all my heart. When I don't know what to do, you help me figure it out. God, I run to you. When I need a solution, I have no doubt that I will run to you. I run to you. I run to you. I run to you. I run to you. Wherever there is freedom, I know that's where you'll be. You make me wanna do what's right and be the best version of me. To know that you're chasing after me, it makes me wanna run to where you are. God, you make this journey worth it. I give you all my heart. When I don't know what to do, you help me figure it out. God, I run to you. When I need a solution, I have no doubt that I will run to you. I 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 don't wanna stop. I don't wanna stop living for you. For you. I don't wanna stop. I don't wanna stop running to you. To you, God. I don't wanna stop. I don't wanna stop living for you. For you. I don't wanna stop. I don't wanna stop running to you. To you, God. You're all I need. My source for everything. When I don't know what to do, you help me figure it out. I run to you. When I need a solution, I have no doubt that I will run to you. When I don't know what to do, you help me figure it out. God, I run to you. When I need a solution, I have no doubt that I will run to you. I run to you. I run to you. I run to you. I run to you.
Welcome to Story Lab. This week, we're talking about knowledge, while we take a look at the story of someone who faced a really tall temptation. Hey, I'm Skylar.
And I'm Sebastian.
We're talking about knowledge, which is learning something new so you can be better at whatever you do.
I've recently discovered some new stuff.
Like what?
Well, I made a quiz for you. It's gonna be out of this world.
Is that a clue?
We're gonna find out how much you know about stars.
Wait, like stars? Or stars?
I mean flaming ball of hydrogen and helium kind.
Is there a prize?
1 chocolate bar for every right answer.
Full size?
You bet. To be delivered through the prize tube extraordinaire.
I'm in.
It's time to play
The Out of This World Quiz Show.
Here's your first question. What type of galaxy is the Milky Way? A. Elliptical. B. Spiral. C. Lenticular. D. Medical.
Oh, I know this one. It's A. No, I mean B. B. Spiral.
Final answer?
Final answer.
Let's see if you're right.
Yes!
Spiral is correct. You get 1 Milky Way bar.
Yum.
Uh-uh-uh.
Hey, I won that.
Maybe. You must wait for the final test.
Okay.
Question 2. What is the nearest star to our solar system? A. Proxima Centauri. B. Sirius. C. Sonic the Hedgehog. Or D. Betelgeuse.
Nearest star. A? Proxima Centauri?
Final answer?
No, D. Betelgeuse.
Let's check that out. Oh, nope, I'm sorry, but the correct answer was A.
Ugh, I knew it.
You have one more chance. Question 3. What is the Kuiper Belt? A. The remains of an exploding supernova. B. An icy collection of objects beyond Neptune's orbit. C. The hottest fashion item. Or D. The tail of an asteroid.
The answer is, I think it's B.
B. An icy collection of objects beyond Neptune's orbit. All right, let's see if it's correct.
Yes!
You win an extra dark chocolate bar.
Can I open it now?
You can open it now, or you can trade your 2 candy bars for what's inside this box.
What is inside that box?
It will only be revealed once you choose. You have 20 seconds.
Well, is it better than 2 chocolate bars?
My lips are sealed.
So it could be a ball of dry Ireland. Or it could be something really awesome. I'm really craving chocolate
You
right
have
now.
5 seconds.
What if there's a $100 bill in the
2
box?
seconds.
Okay, I'm keeping the chocolate.
Congratulations, you have won 2 chocolate bars.
Now I get to see what's in the box, right?
It's time for...
The story before the story.
Today, we're in the 3rd book of the New Testament, Luke. But before Luke, in the very beginning, out of a deep, deep love, God made an amazing world. But when people turned away from God, the world was broken.
God made a plan to bless the whole world through one group of people, the Israelites. Over hundreds of years, God spoke through prophets about the great rescuer God would send. And at last, God sent a tiny baby to be born in the small town of Bethlehem, God's very own son, Jesus. When Jesus grew up, he was baptized in the Jordan River. God spoke from heaven, "This is my son, and I love him. I'm very pleased with him."
Which is where our story starts.
Take it away. Hey, Erica.
Hey, everyone! So, Jesus was about 30 years old at this time. After years of studying God's words and quietly working as a carpenter, now Jesus was revealed to the watching crowds as God's son. It must have seemed like the perfect time for him to start teaching and doing miracles and gathering followers, but that isn't what happened. Instead, God's Spirit led Jesus away from the crowds and towns and into the desert. For 40 long days, Jesus spent time with God, preparing for what God would have him do next. During this time, Jesus ate nothing. He focused on God as the one thing he needed above all else. But he wasn't alone. Not quite, because the devil showed up to distract him.
You must be so hungry. Surely God wouldn't mind if you had just a little snack.
Jesus was God's son, but he was also fully human too. And as the 40 days passed, he became desperately hungry. The devil refused to leave Jesus alone, needling and tempting him at every opportunity. At the end of the 40 days, he offered Jesus a large, smooth stone.
If you really are the Son of God, tell this stone to become bread.
It must have been so easy for Jesus to imagine that rock as a crusty, warm loaf. As God's son, he had the power to change the stone to bread in an instant. He could have torn off large, chewy pieces to satisfy his deep hunger right away, but Jesus knew every word that God had spoken, and he was ready with an answer.
It is written, man must not live only on bread.
If that's the way you want it.
But the devil didn't give up. He led Jesus up to a high place where the whole world appeared to spread out beneath them. Every powerful kingdom, every palace, every throne and ruler on earth. The devil smiled, smooth and seemingly in control.
I will give you all their authority and glory. It has been given to me, and I can give it to anyone I want to. If you worship me, it will all be yours.
Jesus knew that one day he would rule all the nations of the world. He had come as God's rescuer, but to take this easy way the devil offered would destroy God's plan. Once again, Jesus spoke God's words.
It is written, worship the Lord your God. He is the only one you should serve.
The devil was seething. He couldn't tempt Jesus into taking the easy road, but he had one final shot to try. The devil led Jesus to the city of Jerusalem. They stood on the very highest point of the temple itself. The worshipers below seemed small as ants.
If you are the Son of God, throw yourself down from here. It is written, the Lord will command his angels to take good care of you. They will lift you up in their hands. Then you won't trip over a stone.
The devil wanted to trap Jesus, to make him panic. Does God really love you? Prove it. But again, Jesus had God's own words at the ready.
Scripture says, do not test the Lord your God.
The devil was furious. He couldn't trip Jesus up no matter what he tried. So at last, he left until he could find a better chance. When the devil was gone, God had sent angels to take care of Jesus and provide everything he needed. Jesus had spent his whole life discovering God's words and spending time with God. And so when he had to make some tough choices, the words were right there.
40 whole days with no food? I can't even imagine that.
Yeah, I sure do not make good choices when I'm hungry.
And it's not just when you're hungry. Difficult choices can show up at any time. And remembering what's true can help you make the wise choice.
So what's our part in this story?
Well, before you remember what's true, you have to discover what's true. You can start by reading God's words in Scripture.
And memorizing it too.
And you can spend time talking with people who've been following God a while.
Here are some super important truths to start with. God made you and loves you. You are so valuable that Jesus gave up his life so that you could have a relationship with God forever.
God always hears you when you pray and is acting to provide what you need, even if it's not in the way you expect.
And you can know the most important thing is to love God and love others.
Exactly. The more those truths are rooted in your heart, the easier it is to face tough choices.
Maybe you're at a friend's house and they're trying to get you to watch a show your parents specifically said you can't watch.
You can remember that you are already deeply loved by God, so you don't have to do something wrong just to be liked.
Or when your little sister is bugging you and you're about to snap, you can stop and remember loving others is more important.
Exactly. I think y'all got it. See you next time.
Bye, Erica.
So here's the thing. Remembering what's true can help you make the wise choice. Now do I get to see what's inside the box?
Sure.
Get that away from me!
It could be covered in chocolate. No!